夢の国を探す君の名を誰もが心に刻むまで悲しみ乗り越えた微笑みに君を信じていいですか
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining. My name is Berit and today it is time for part 4 of the Hoshin Engi series. So this video will probably be long and confusing, and I just want to say sorry for that in advance. If you're confused by what's about to come, I can advise you to maybe read Hoshin Engi because it will be much more detailed than what I'm about to give you, although it might not be much less confusing than what I'm about to give you. So, not me pressuring people to read Hoshin Engi, not at all. Also, before I start, a spoiler warning for everything up to the middle of volume 17 today. So we are approaching the last third of the series. And we will today start after the death of Chokomei. We remember how fabulous it all was. As I have mentioned in my previous video, Chokomei's death has very heavy repercussions for the whole story because it sets off a Sennin world war. And the thing is that at the end of the battle against Chokomei, Genshi Tenson joins the battle. And because of that, the people from Kingo Islands, the Utenkun, which is this group of very strong Sennin from Kingo, they decide to release Bunshu from his alternate dimension prison kind of thing. We remember he has been, captured there or imprisoned there for quite some time now. And they decide that Bunshu should be released now in order to defeat Kongrong Mountains. And we also now meet the boss of the Utenkun, the chief of them, which is Utenkun. He's like the highest of the Utenkun, but he's not the chief of Kingo Island. He's just the boss of this group. Bunshu first goes to the human world to check up on things, and he finds out what we as readers already know, that Ducky, the evil over lady of this manga, she has disappeared, so she's not really part of the story at the moment. And Bunshu then goes back to Kingo Island and decides to move the whole thing in the direction of Kongrong Mountains to attack them. And Taikobo gets to know this from Shinkoyo. We remember he is ice cream cone clown. So people on Kongrong Mountains also find out that Bunshu wants to move Kingo Island, and Ryukitsu Koshu, who is an extremely strong Sennin, and she has appeared very briefly in the story, but I haven't mentioned her. She goes to the power core of Kongrong Mountain together with Taitsu, who is the maker of Nataku and also kind of like a Paopei engineer, to move Kongrong Mountains. And the thing is that Ryukitsu Koshu is the only Sennin strong enough to move Kongrong Mountains, so she is the one who has to do that. The thing is that Kongrong Mountains is not exactly battle ready. Quite some things would need to get repaired first. And Bunshu, he moves Kingo Island and then launches a missile attack to buy some time because he's charging the main gun of Kingo Island with which he wants to shoot at Kongrong Mountains. But Yosen fights off the attack thanks to his ability to transform into other people and then have their abilities to shield Kongrong Mountains. But eventually Bunshu manages to shoot with the main gun at Kongrong Mountains, which gives the whole place a pretty heavy blow while Kingo Island is protected by a shield. Yosen sneaks into Kingo Island to turn off the shield, but he gets trapped in an alternate dimension. And just to recap very shortly, the Utenkun of Kingo Islands they have a power pay that is not a weapon, but it is a room or a dimension in which they can trap people. And this is a pattern that happens in this part of the story, that Sendo from Kongrong Mountains get trapped into one of these alternate dimensions, and then they have to fight the Utenkun there in order to get out again. And during this fight, something very interesting happens, because Yosen reveals his true form, because he is a yokai senin. What? He wins the fight, but obviously he has to use quite a lot of energy because he reveals his true form. And he turns off the shield of Kingo Island, but first he has a conversation with Utenkun, the chief of the Utenkun. The names are way too similar if you ask me, but yeah, Yosen has a conversation with Utenkun, who apparently kind of has his own plans that he follows, and we don't know yet what those plans are, but I can just say that he's a little shit, but you'll get why. Utenkun, the little shit, later explains to Bunshu that he let Yosen live because A, the Senin from Kongrong Mountains will probably come to rescue him, so they will be easy targets because they have to go to Kingo Island to rescue Yosen. And also B, another revelation, Yosen is also the son of the chief of Kingo Island. After the shield is turned off, Kongrong Mountains, they crash into Kingo Islands in order to avoid being shot at again. So by crashing into Kingo Islands, they actually destroy the main gun. So they kind of crash into Kingo Islands on purpose, but you can get that this will make a whole big mess, this world war. And Taikobo also decides to go to Kingo Island and rescue Yosen. And two people come with him, well, three people. Supu, of course, comes with them, but also Gyokute, who is Yosen's master, he also joins, and also Sengyoku, who is I don't remember, is she a doshi or a senin? But anyway, she is a former member of Kingo Islands, and so she also knows her way around in Kingo Islands, so she can help them find Yosen a bit quicker. They, of course, get trapped in one of the alternate dimensions, which is a game kind of dimension, but they manage to defeat the Utenkun there. Utenkun, meanwhile, keeps Yosen hostage in his alternate dimension, and Gyokute is the one who goes to rescue Yosen, because he kind of knows that Yosen probably doesn't want anybody to see him, because he doesn't want anybody to find out that he's a yokai, because nobody knows this. Gyokute manages to rescue Yosen, but he also sacrifices himself in the process, so he dies, which is kind of not very fun. Sad things will start happening around this time in the plot. So, yeah. Yosen gets transported back to Kongrong Mountains, but he needs to get medical treatment because he's infected with something from Utenkun, which is something like a flea that bites people and that then drains their energy. So I'm sorry, but do we need more proof that Utenkun is evil and kind of disgusting and just a little shit? The 12 elite Senin and Taikobo then make small groups to invade Kingo Island. And the plan is that each group takes care of one of the enemies, because they have several Utenkun to fight. And meanwhile, in the human world, we still have Hiko, who we have met in the beginning of the manga already, and also his sons Tenka and Tensho, who get the Unshu sisters, that's the three sisters of Chokome, to bring them back into the Sennin world to help. The thing is, they bring them to Kingo Island, and as they arrive there, they get trapped in an alternate dimension, but they manage to get out again eventually. So the Sennin from Kongrong Mountains, they have formed groups, and Taikobo and his group is very small. It's Taikobo, Supu and Fugen, who is one of the 12 elite Sennin and also one of my favorite characters. He is a very calm person, he doesn't like conflict, and he has a very interesting Paopei, which is kind of a physics Paopei. They are also waiting for their fourth group member, who is another Doshi who hasn't arrived yet. They get trapped in an alternate dimension, but of course they also manage to get out. We can sense the pattern. And while on Kongrong Mountains, they discover a pill as a medicine for Yozen's infection. All the regular Sendo who are on Kingo Islands, they all get infected with Utenkun's fleas, the little shit. And Bukichi, who I have mentioned briefly, he's a Tennen Doshi, so he's one of those humans who have the Sennin Kotsu but who haven't trained to become a Sennin or a Doshi. He's not affected because he's a Tennen Doshi and his body is so strong that he isn't affected by the infection. He is charged to bring everybody who's infected back to Kongrong Mountains for treatment. Also, at the same time, the last member of Taikobo's group, Ego, arrives. And Ego has very sensitive skin, so he's not infected by the fleas because the fleas bite the people in order to infect them, and Ego's skin is so sensitive that he can sense this before the fleas bite, so he's able to kind of fight them off and kill them before they can bite him. And he is sent to help Nataku, who is also not affected by the infection because he's a Paopei human, so he's also not a regular Sendo. And also, while everybody now goes to Kongrong Mountain to get treatment for the infection, Yozen, who has been healed again, he goes back to Kingo Island on his own to kill Utenkun, the little shit. But Yozen, he gets trapped in another one of those alternate dimensions, but Ego and Nataku, who are still on Kingo Islands because they are not infected, they follow him into this dimension. But the fight that they have there is very tough because they fight two Utenkun together or at the same time. And the thing is that while Ego and Nataku get out of the dimension after the fight, they win the fight, Yozen wakes up somewhere else in his true form. Meanwhile, again, we have, I'm sorry, but we have several places where the plot takes place. I'm really sorry if that's confusing. Meanwhile, Fugen also makes Taikobo understand that his plan isn't really working, and Taikobo then decides, instead of going after the Utenkun, to also attack Kingo's power core to lure out Bunshu from there. And this doesn't sound like a suicide mission at all, if you ask me. I mean, it sounds like a waterproof plan to lure out Bunshu and then just fight him. Yeah, sounds very good. Anyway, back to Yozen. He's woken up near where his father, the chief of Kingo Island, is, and now we also get the background story of Utenkun, which is connected to Yozen's background story. So 200 years ago, as Daki became very strong and formed her own group, kind of, and started launching out from Kingo Island, the chief of Kingo Island came to Genshi Tenson, chief of Kongrong Mountain, to sign a non-aggression pact. And as a sign or as a proof for their mutual goodwill, they exchange hostages in a way. So Yozen was put into Kongrong Mountain's care, and Ueki, who at the time was Genshi Tenson's first disciple, was put into the care of Kingo Island. And now 100 points for everyone who can guess who Ueki has become. Utenkun. Right. But let's say Yosen had a better life at Kongrong Mountains than Ueki had at Kingo Island, which turned Ueki, well, Utenkun, into the little shit that he is now, because he also was under the influence of Ducky. Ta-da! And that is why he is just about as evil as she is. The little shit. Utenkun also makes Yosen fight his own father, who has kind of lost his mind, so he's more of an empty shell than a person, which doesn't really make the fight any more dramatic, though. Just an FYI for you. Back at Kongrong, Supushan's father has been called by Taikobo, and he transforms into his battle form. We have seen how Suppu does this as he ate the rainbow dragons. And Suppu's father basically eats or devours the infection that everybody has gotten. Which is, from the systematic how it works, very similar to what Suppu has done to the rainbow dragons, because in their battle forms they are so strong that they can kind of devour the Paupe energy. Taikobo and Fugen are still in Kingo Island. They are the only ones who did not go back to Kongrong Mountains to get treatment. They still want to go, or well, Taikobo still wants to go after Bunshu. And so after the people of Kongrong Mountains are healed, Yosen and Taikobo make a plan that Taikobo will be the bait for Bunshu to buy time while everybody from Kongrong Mountain gets back to Kingo Island to fight. But Fugen, the good-hearted idiot, he slips Taikobo sleeping pills to save him, because he says that Taikobo is the one who has to survive and he shouldn't be the one who's the bait for Bunshu. So he slips Taikobo sleeping pills and sends him off, and then is the bait for Bunshu himself. As Bunshu shows up, Fugen first tries to resolve things peacefully, because he hates conflict. But this does, surprise, not work. And it turns out that Bunshu wants Kongrong Mountains and Kingo Island to fight and destroy each other in order to save Yin. And we also remember that Bunshu puts Yin above all else. So Fugen and Bunshu fight, and while Fugen is very strong and has an awesome physics Paupe, he doesn't hurt Bunshu one bit, while Bunshu can hurt Fugen pretty badly, although Fugen has a kind of protective shield around him. So we're starting to see how strong Bunshu really is. And as Bunshu is ready to deal the final blow to Fugen, Taikobo is back, because he has, of course, also noticed that Fugen slipped him sleeping pills. Taikobo is back and rescues Fugen with his Paupe. And then Taikobo and Fugen continue to fight Bunshu together, but they basically manage to get like one tiny scratch on him. Eventually the other Sendo arrive, but they still can't really manage to defeat Bunshu because he's just too effing strong for everyone. But however, at the same time, because they did destroy Kingo Island's power core at some point, Kingo Island starts to slowly sink, kind of like a ship. And Taikobo now proposes that the elite Zenin, they use the chaos that this sinking creates to launch one big attack at Bunshu. However, Fugen secretly convinces them to fight Bunshu one-on-one to break his attention, so that he can sneak up on him and attack Bunshu so close that he cannot dodge the attack. And this involves, however, that all of those who are fighting will lose their life. So Fugen is asking them to sacrifice themselves in order to defeat Bunshu. And this also includes Fugen, who is then kind of like the last attacker. And the thing is that this is, I mean, we're talking the elite Sannin, like the best Sannin from Kongrong Mountains, and we're talking 10 people sacrificing their lives in order to defeat one character. And the cherry on top of that kind of heartbreaking suicide mission is that they don't kill Bunshu. They don't manage it. He's too strong, so a lot of people die and Bunshu disappears from the scene without having been killed. Among the few people who survive this calamity are Hiko and his sons, who have been on Kingo Island, but they haven't really done much there. The main plot was somewhere else. But Hiko gets kidnapped by Utenkun, well, because Utenkun is a little shit. You'll see. So, anyway, we don't really have time to recover much from what has happened, because Bunshu, he has disappeared because he's gone to Kongrong Mountains, where he now fights Genshi Tenson, the chief of Kongrong Mountain. But even he cannot defeat Bunshu, so Bunshu has now fought Fugen alone, Fugen together with Taikobo, then 10 of the 12 elite Sannin, then Genshi Tenson, and he's still very much alive and not defeated, but he defeated all of them single-handedly. So yeah, if he's that strong and Shinkoyo is even stronger, guess we start to see the implications of that. The last act of the Sannin World War takes place in Utenkun's alternate dimension, where he has kidnapped Hiko, the little shit. Now, however, Bunshu is also there because he's also been kidnapped. And, well, after volume 16 ripped my heart out because Fugen is dead now, volume 17 does so as well because, well, need I say that Bunshu wins the fight against his former best buddy who made him believe in something positive again after years and years of closing himself up against the world because of the shit Bunshu has experienced because of Daki? No? I don't have to say it? So I also don't have to tell you now that Hiko is dead? Good. Good. That's good. Where were we? Yeah. Okay. So Taikobo and Bunshu meet once again, and Taikobo now accuses Bunshu of having steered the human world from behind the scenes for ages, and Bunshu also finally kind of understands that Taikobo needs to fulfill his mission. He needs to defeat Daki for humanity's sake, but he doesn't let Taikobo kill him. Instead, Bunshu lets himself fall off a cliff at the end, and that's how he dies. And thus also ends the Sannin World War. So yeah, that was part 4 of this series about the Sannin World War. A lot of stuff happened. I'm sorry if this was confusing. Essentially, both Kingo Island and Kongrong Mountains are destroyed now, as well as my heart, because Fugen and Hiko and Bunshu and Gyokutei, so many people are dead. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this further exploration of the plot, although it was not exactly about the fun parts of the plot anymore. And yeah. Thanks for watching. Maybe I'll see you in the next one, and maybe we will need tissues for that one. So, bye!